Hey everybody, what's up? Circus here. We're gonna be doing a post KCGT interview with Neg1 to see how things went for them. If you were watching the channel earlier this week, you saw us do a pre KCGT interview. So we're gonna check in and see how things went for them. How you doing, Neg?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back.
We love having you on. You've been requested a few times in the chat, or in the comments below. So we're always happy to have you back on the channel. So. We're just going to start off right away. How'd you finish? Or how do you think you finished? Because we don't have official results yet, right? But how do you think you finished?
I think I finished around like maybe 14th or so, maybe 13th. I was really close to top 10, but I didn't quite make it. I
Okay.
finished with either 77,000 or 78,000. I don't know if my last game was counted or not, so
So, what do you know what the highest score was? What first place got?
I believe first place was uh they reported as 87,000 points
So, the
in total.
points weren't just out of control this time around.
Yeah. So this Casey Cup, if you played, you know, but it was a much slower Casey Cup. It was very difficult to climb just because there were so many decks.
Okay.
And yeah,
Well,
it definitely,
I remember asking you how is it going, and you said it was kind of like playing in what an MCS top 32, where it's just kind of like
yeah,
all over the place, or a Meta Weekly top
yeah.
32.
Typically in Casey Cup, there's like very clear, like most played strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And at times there was that for this Casey Cup, but there were often times where it's just like this deck, it's the most played, but it's at most like 20% of what you see. So
Oh,
it's
really?
like
Okay.
in other Casey Cups, what is most played is more like 30 to maybe 40 on a really extreme cases.
Mm-hmm.
But here it's like you're gonna see Cyber Dragons almost all the time, but like you're not gonna always see Blackwings, whereas other times you are gonna see a lot of Blackwings.
Okay.
Or like Dark Magician, there were like times where you can go on like 20 game stretches, zero Dark Magician, and then you see like stretch of like five Dark Magician or in like 10 games or something.
Okay, because I remember asking you about it, and you listed off like 8 decks that you were playing against. It was just
Yeah,
like a whole variety of things. So that makes it more difficult, right? Because maybe it's a little bit harder to choose a deck that does well against like 3 or 4 decks, right? Like, oh, this one has good matchups against what I'm seeing, but when you're seeing 8 to 10 different decks all the time, it's really hard to find one that can handle them all.
yeah, definitely. Like the decks that were around were Shiranui, Element Sabers, Cyber Dragons, Kristrons, Dark Magician, Dragunity, Lunalights, Heroes, Neos, and sometimes Ritual Beasts. So that's like
Okay.
10 decks that you see in like fluctuating frequency.
Hmm.
And it's like you can account for some of those and you can maybe account for a majority, but you can't account for 10 different strategies. It's
Right.
just too diverse.
Now, I have a personal interest in the Lunalights because I predicted it, and Herf said, "No way, Circus, you're crazy." What did you see from Lunalights? Were they up there, or were they more down in the Circus zone?
I saw them in both. I saw maybe not as much in like the day three, but I definitely saw them a lot days one and two.
Because they're a quick
Um,
OTK deck. People are just trying to rack up points.
yeah, and they're definitely like because they can run skills like Master of Fusion, and that's a skill you can get on Zane. Therefore,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
bluff that you're Cyber Dragons, and people aren't gonna
Yep.
try to push for damage if you make a defensive play. They're not going to push for damage just to play around Cyber style. Therefore, you get a lot of mileage out of very minimalist plays sometimes.
Right, because just going into the game, someone going first might see Zane and be like, all right, I got to set up for Cyber Dragons. And then, surprise, it's Lunalights.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So, why don't you tell us a little bit how things went Friday? Did you start like soon as the event started?
Yeah. So I started pretty much when the event like began, and I had a decent showing, or like I guess not showing, but like I started kind of okay, but it quickly like I realized how wide the meta was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I expected more of just like Cyber Dragons, Black Queens, and maybe some Shiranui, but at the start it was legit like much wider. Like it was a ton of control decks, so Element Sabers and Shiranui. But you also saw Dark Magician, and you also saw Cyber Dragons, and it was just too much to have like a counter strategy, you know.
What's it
But
like a day one or when it first starts and everybody's like just starting out and playing those early games, you know, because if you wait a little while, everything clears out, right? Everybody moves up, and then you're down there. If you get started late, it's pretty easy going. Is it pretty hectic getting those like first 5 wins?
um, it's just like I mean, if you start like at the beginning, you're
Mm-hmm.
typically playing against Japanese player base or like people in Asia, just because their time zone is much better for it.
Okay,
Um,
because
but
for
you
you it
could also
starts
be
at
playing
midnight, right?
against
It starts
yeah for
yeah.
so if you really want to be competitive in North America, you kind of have to hurt your sleep schedule in a
Right.
sense.
Do you feel it's important to get those points early? Like you have to start at midnight, or could you wake up at 6 a.m. and make a run at
I
it?
think you could definitely wake up later and still do well. I think in my November Casey Cup win, uh, I started at the beginning, but like I didn't feel well, so I had to like rest. So I started like in a sense I started like 3 hours ish behind, or three
Okay.
or 4 hours behind, and like it didn't hurt me long term.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
yeah.
So how did your day one go?
So day one, I mostly played Element Sabers. I also played Cristrons and just other decks, trying stuff out, seeing what works. Um, but like day one, I was trying Element Sabers, but well, day one I also played Cristrons, but there were a lot of Black Queens, and Black Queens have Necro Valley, which can be difficult to deal with. So I
Mm-hmm.
switched over to Element Sabers to have a good matchup there.
All right. So I got your
Uh,
deck on the screen now. It's kind of a two-parter. So let's look at the first part of the deck, the monsters. We're seeing, three Alistair, three Malehu. Um, is that just a pretty standard build with monsters, and then you just have tons of spells and traps, right?
Yeah, so the monster lineup, it's not very complicated. You probably know what these cards do by now.
Right.
Alistair accesses your extra deck, and Malehu is your primary control deck monster.
Mm-hmm. Then you got the guy that can pop the
Attributes,
traps, right?
yeah. You have the light, which is a negate, which is good against some decks, and
Mm-hmm.
the water, which is just a good attribute, and then earth for mostly the attribute, but it has an effect that can do stuff like one every 20 games or something.
Okay.
But,
So you're running two invocation. That's pretty standard, also, right? You don't usually see three.
yeah.
And then the three palace, obviously. Concentrating current. Was that
Yeah.
just for this event?
Yeah, so uh I was playing and like I wasn't sure what to put in my deck, so I like put current. And honestly, I feel like current is such a bad card. Like it only cheeses people.
Right.
Its only function is to win while you're already playing. Like if you can summon a fusion monster, you're already playing the game, and it's only then you just is it like an auto win in that scenario.
Right.
It would be better to have a card that helps you when you're not in those like I'm in a good spot,
Mm-hmm. Well, I was
you
just
know?
gonna say, what did
Because this
because
is
you're saying when you're already playing the game. What do you mean when you're not playing the game? Like maybe you're behind or you're bricked or something. Is that what you mean?
um when you so like it's only good in that scenario when you have a fusion monster out. So in other times when you don't have a fusion monster out, you usually have a. Just think about it. You have either like an Element Saber or you have Alistair. You don't
Hmm.
have both. Because when you have both, you can go into fusions and then you have plays. But when you only have one, then you're like really weak in defense. And so like current, it doesn't really do anything there. It just protects one monster, but not all of your monsters. It can kind of protect an Alistair because it goes to 2800,
Hmm.
but it's not that great. It can't do anything with Malehu because he has 0 defense. So generally, it's just not that strong of a card when you're not already in a good position.
So
Um,
why wouldn't you just put Power of the Guardians in there? Everybody knows that's the best card in the game.
Honestly, I considered Clash, World Legacy Clash.
Okay.
I didn't consider Power of the Guardians, but honestly, it might be better than Current, just because Current is such a weak card.
Then why'd you use it?
Clash or Power of the Guardians?
No, no. Concentrating current.
Current, I just used it because it's like, well, in a sense, I felt like I have to just because it's like the common card to run. So
Hmm.
like you have to make people respect Current,
Right.
you know? But later on, I actually did switch it for Clash, and it was like so much better, just because people play around Current anyway. So like,
Hmm.
you'll attack in with a monster, and they'll just like be afraid of Current, so they play around it.
Okay.
Then you just Clash, and so or like you save Clash, you you're fine.
Okay.
Or if
Twist.
they attack in,
Oh,
sorry,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
or let. So what happened once is someone just attacks in. My monster flips up. They activate Current. They activate Alistair, and then it boosts up to like a 6,000 attack Purgatrio or 7,000. And then I just clash off my monster, and then they lose 2 cards for free.
Right.
Well, I guess it's a -1, but it's like they wasted Current. They wasted an Alistair. So like you have Current versus Current. Like Current, whoever is like being more aggressive will win. But if you have Current versus Clash, Clash wins. So it's like in those. That's why I think like it's just really unga bunga, while
Hmm.
as Clash has like more defensive utility.
A little bit more subtle use. Okay. So I'm also seeing Twister. I mean, for a while, we used to laugh at that card. I would mention, hey, use Twister, use Twister. It's what from the first box. It's old, but it's a quick play, right?
Yeah. So Twister is just you want to have one out to Necro Valley, you know?
Okay.
So in like this really long game against Black Wings when they just have Necro Valley up, you want to be able to remove it somehow. And
Right.
so Twister is good over like say Unending, because like Unending you have to wait for it to activate, whereas Twister it's like you can Destiny draw for it or you can draw it and like activate it immediately.
Do you really want to? Well, I guess. Do you want to use your Destiny draw on Twister? I guess if you're desperate, yes. But otherwise, it's one card in a 30 card deck.
I mean,
Don't you?
Destiny draw lets you draw whatever you want. So it's like if you
Yeah.
have this utility of like toolboxing your deck, it can help. Like I've once had someone cyclone my invocation, and then
Mhm.
I chain Twister to pop my invocation so I could get Alistair back
Oh, nice.
recycled. That was like what let me game them. So
Nice. Okay, that is an inventive use of Twister. Okay, so we all know Neg's pay to win because he's got 3 Phoenix Chain and 3 Needle
yeah.
Sealing. Um, let's go over obviously Phoenix Chain. What do you wait for their boss monster, or do you wait? Depending on the deck, you see what they summon first, and maybe you can like negate something like a core right away and be like, nope.
Yeah, so like uh you can just Fiendish Chain. It's just so strong. It's like Dark Lords can. It's like every control deck is Dark Lords now. They can negate monsters, and it's
Right.
like really effective.
Hmm.
It's like Floodgate, but it negates. It locks down the monster, and then really slows down a lot of combo decks. So
Except,
Fiendish Chain is really strong.
it does have a drawback or a limitation, a cost, in that it takes up a back row. It occupies a back row spot.
That is true.
Whereas
However,
Floodgate, you use it and then it goes to the grave.
yeah, I would say Fiendish Chain does have the advantage of um, you can use it whenever though. So it's
Right.
like if
Yeah.
they summon the monster, or like you don't have to you have to floodgate it when it's summoned, or you just don't get to floodgate
Right.
it. Whereas Fiendish Chain, it's like they summon the monster, and then you can like wait or make decisions depending on what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Fiendish Chain is a lot better going second than Floodgate, because if they summon, I don't know, say like a big monster like Sun Saga going first, Floodgate does nothing against that, whereas Fiendish Chain will just stop it
Right.
on your turn, on their turn, whatever.
We got you. We got you. Needle sealing. This is the one that always makes me nervous because you might end up popping your own stuff. Is there a way to protect your own monster here, or is it just we're all gonna die together?
So there's a lot of value in needle sealing IMO. So like, especially early on when it was like a lot of combo decks or like a lot of high octane stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a lot of Blackwings, so, and they just put out 3 monsters every day.
Yeah, they don't
And
care. It's like you got a
yeah,
set card. I'm doing it anyway. Yeah.
yeah. So like Blackwings needle sealing. If you have a card, if you can, even if you just set Malehu with needle sealing, that's free value.
Yeah, because you might go what +1 in that exchange.
Well, if you set your monster, like if you set Alistair with needle sealing, like that's 3 monsters they lose for 1 card you use. You know?
Okay. Well, you lose your own Alistair, right? But no.
Well, it only destroys the face-up monsters.
Oh, only face up. Okay, so if you set, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was just 4 monsters. So it's as long as there's 3 or more monsters on the board, you can destroy all the face up ones.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you also have the added benefit of Malehu can flip itself down. So then you kill their board and your monster is safe.
Nice. Okay. So it can be a little tricksy. I like that. Did you end up using it a lot?
Uh Early on, yeah, I'd say so. Like there was a lot of Blackwings and what else? There was also a decent amount of Kristrons early day one. And like Kristrons, they put monsters on the board pretty fast, so
Okay.
it's good against them.
All right. So I'm gonna put up the second part of your deck here, and the rest of it is 3 Canada, 3 Floodgate. What do you know?
Yeah. So the floodgate, those
See?
were in the entire time because like it's floodgate. It just stops a monster. They
Right.
can't. It just sticks there, and they have to either remove it, or do something about it, because otherwise Purgatrio just OTKs them eventually. And Canadia, this was a few cards actually. So sometimes I was running Canadia, other times I was trying out a Pointer of the Red Lotus or Void Trap Hole
Mm-hmm.
or something else, Um, Canadia is just the most versatile, or it's just like the most similar to Floodgate and Malehu, so it's just there.
Well, it's nice because you throw it in the grave, and then since you're using 27 traps anyways, you just bring it back out as a block. That's pretty nice.
And you needle sealing because it's an extra monster on board. And
Right.
then, yeah.
There you go. I do notice needle sealing, Canada, Floodgate, all on your favorites list. Fiendish Chain is not, however. How is that possible?
Because I don't have to scroll for Fiendish Chain. It's just like near the top.
Oh, okay. Because I was looking at the rest. Twister is also a favorite. Really, Twister?
I just have a lot of the removal cards on favorites.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll let you off on that one then. Side deck or the extra deck, pretty much the same, right? You got 3 Purgatrio, the Megalenica, the Caucasus, and then the Caliga. Did you go into any of the things really besides Purgatrio and Caucasus? I mean,
Yeah, so Caliga is good against combo decks. Like, you make Kaliga against Black Queens, and it's harder for them to really OTK. You
Okay.
make it against Kristrons, and it's really difficult for them to do anything.
So they can only
Um,
activate one effect per
yeah.
turn. Right. Okay.
If you make it against even Cyber Dragons, like if they activate Core, then they won't be able to activate Rampage Dragon effect to blow up
Okay.
aggro.
And then what about the
And
big bead stick? Any time? Did you use that?
yeah, you make it sometimes just because it's like it's a big monster. Also because Magelenica doesn't have an effect, therefore you can't Fiendish Chain it.
I was about to say, does it count
So
as a normal monster then?
uh, it's considered a non-effect monster, I
A
guess.
non-effect. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I guess yeah, it's
because
not a straight vanilla monster, but it doesn't have an effect, so
yeah. So because it doesn't have an effect, Fiendish Chain they can't target it because Fiendish Chain has to target an effect monster. Therefore, in control against control decks, you can make Magelenica when you're pretty sure they have Fiendish Chain, and you can just swing with that. Then they're forced to use other cards to deal with it.
okay. So overall, how'd you do with Element Sabers?
I would say it was decent. Like it got me some it got me wins and it got me somewhere like day one at least.
What's
It
somewhere? I mean,
was my best performing deck.
which one?
Oh no, what'd you say?
Oh, I was gonna say you said it got you somewhere. What do you mean somewhere? 30,000, 40,000, 15,000?
So I'd say my day one it was comprised of mostly using Kristrons and Element Sabers, and that got me to around 35,000 or so around the end of the first day.
Okay. Did you consider that a good day or no?
I I felt like it was a pretty bad day,
Really?
just because like um, it when I ended the day, I think I was either barely in top 100 or just outside top 100.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I wanted to do really well this KC Cup, so if I'm like not even in top 100, it's not a good sign.
I was about to
Or
say,
like
does that
at
eat
least
at
for
your
me,
soul a little bit?
yeah, it did.
Did you like? I mean, like you think about it as you're going to sleep, and then you wake up, and first thing is, man, I'm 115. This isn't good. What do I do?
Uh, I mean, it bothers me when I go to sleep, but like at that point, I'm just too tired to care, so I just fall asleep.
Right.
And then when I wake up, it's like, all right, I'm ready to go at it. I'm ready to get some wins. So
Okay.
I'm not bothered in the morning.
Okay. So you started at midnight. You played till what? 6 a.m., 7 a.m. How long did you play?
Um, yeah, I played for. I'm trying to remember how long. I've for a few hours at least, but like at some point I felt like I had a bit of a headache or I felt really tired, so
Mm-hmm.
I went to sleep just to wake up for a
You
little
got
while.
you got to get those glasses with the blue light filter. That way you don't get the headache and the eye strain. Just saying. You can buy just the filter. It's like wearing a football helmet. That's a sport, by the way. You can look it up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. All right. So then, did you sleep all day and get up in the middle of the afternoon and start playing again, or did you? What'd you do?
No, I still woke up. It was still the morning. It may have been 10 or so, but like I played really early and then I took a nap and then I woke up and then was awake for the rest of the day.
So now we're into day two, right?
Uh, mm,
Or was that still day one?
that was day one.
Okay, so that'd be day
Uh,
one, and then you played. So like when you went to bed after like starting at midnight, you go to bed at let's say 6 a.m. Where are you at there? Is that where you're at 35,000, or were you still lower than that?
think of the okay. So the timeline is it starts at midnight and
Yep.
then I play in the morning and then I take a nap and then I wake up and then play for most of the day and then like I think I went to bed at like 11 p.m. or somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the next day, I wake up around like 7 or 8. And that's when I would say day 2 started for me.
Okay. And you have roommates, correct?
Yeah.
Do they walk by and they're like, "Hey, what's Neg doing?" And the other guy's like, "Ah, he's just doing his kid game thing. He's playing his little kitty card game. Is he gonna get off the couch? I don't know. I don't know what he's doing today. Is that what it's like or no?"
It's well, I think they know that I'm just doing this, and they're like, just let him do it.
Do they know what you've accomplished in the game or no?
Uh, they like it's the same thing of like I think I told you, like I've told my parents like I've done well, and it's like they know that it's happened. They just if they were asked to like name even the month that it happened, they couldn't do it. You know?
So they're like, "What's he doing?" Oh, he's playing his Candyland again. There he goes. There he is.
Yeah.